It is about that. It was that.
It is on.
It's on. Perfect. All right. Great. Good evening, everyone. I am so excited to welcome you all to the very first ever Best Talk for Music Education. So my name is Amanda Zambrano. Yeah, woo, I heard that. My name is Amanda Zambrano. It is my privilege to serve here at Houghton College as the Grant Writer and Donor Communications Director. I'm especially delighted tonight to introduce you to a classmate of mine and a classmate of Dr. Clem's from the Houghton College class of 2005, Mr. Jordan Markwood. So Jordan, yeah, round of applause. Jordan is coming to us tonight from Sterling, Virginia. He is currently in his 8th year at Rock Ridge High School as the choral director and fine arts department chair. Mr. Markwood founded the Rock Ridge Choral Program in the fall of 2014 with the opening of Loudoun County's 14th high school. This was a unique opportunity since he had started and for 7 years developed the choral program at Stonehill Middle School, which is a feeder school for Rockwood High School. In his position, Mr. Markwood directs 4 choirs and co-teaches the musical theater class. The Rock Ridge Chamber Choir performed on the Millennium Stage at the Kennedy Center for Music in Our Schools Month in 2017 and at the VMEA Annual Conference in 2018. Mr. Markwood also serves as the vocal director for Rock Ridge Performing Arts musical productions. In 2019, the Rock Ridge Performing Arts production of Bright Star School Edition was selected to perform in the Lead Theater at the International Thespian Festival. Mr. Markwood holds a Bachelor of Education from Houghton College in Music Education with a concentration in voice. He graduated from Westminster Choir College at Rider University with a Master in Music and Vocal Pedagogy and Performance. He served as the director for Voices of Youth, a youth mission choir in the summer of 2010, and as assistant director in 2004 and 2007. Mr. Markwood directed the Shenandoah Valley Chorus, a chapter of the Sweet Adelines in Winchester, Virginia from 2007 to 2013. Mr. Markwood has been a guest conductor for middle and high school honors choirs across the state of Virginia and served as the Virginia ACDA Middle School Repertoire and Resources Chair from 2013 to 2015. In addition to his teaching and guest conducting positions, he is also currently the Director of Music at Galilee United Methodist Church in Sterling, Virginia. In addition to being a talented choral conductor and vocal director, I know Jordan to be an incredibly gifted singer. I have fond memories of performing the Domine Deus from Bach's Mass in B minor on my own senior recital with Jordan. More recently, I've enjoyed the contributions he's made to the world through sharing his gifts via social media during the pandemic. I invite you to join me in welcoming Mr. Jordan Markwood.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Amanda. Thank you, Dr. Clem, for having me here as well. I'm really excited to be back in Houghton. It's been almost 15 years since I was here last, so it's lovely to be back on campus and to share what I've learned through my experiences with you this evening. While I was here, our class verse for the class of 2005 was from Psalm 19:14, and I'd like to start with that as I feel like it's appropriate before I share. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, Lord, my rock and my redeemer. A few pictures here, you may recognize one of the other individuals up there, Dr. Mueller. But I truly cannot thank Houghton enough for my experiences here. I am grateful for the foundation that it provided me personally and professionally. One of the things I will tell you, going straight on to grad school, the only proficiency test I did not pass was piano, and that was in no fault of Houghton College because I took several semesters of piano. It's just never been my gift, but I can sing for you all day long. So a quote I love is that music is the vernacular of the human soul by Jeffrey Latham. And this truly speaks to me because throughout my entire life, music has always been a huge part of it. Whether it was children's choir from the age of 5, where the director told my parents I was already singing too loud, to the gifted and talented music program in my school, to vacation Bible school at church or summer choir camp at Camp Overlook, a Christian camp nearby. Whether it was helping with the music team for Chrysalis, which is the youth version of the Walk to Emmaus, whether it was helping on mission trips and all of the professional tasks I took on later on in life. But one of the other activities that had the most profound impact on me was a group called Voices of Youth, which Amanda mentioned earlier. This was a youth mission choir sponsored by the Virginia Conference of the United Methodist Church. And through that opportunity, we spent a week-long mission service, and then we would come back and do a tour of the state, giving a concert, but also sharing testimony about what our theme was that year and the work and the relationships that we had built with others. While I was a part of that group, one of the pastors that I had the opportunity to meet and become friends with shared this: "Your calling is where your greatest passions and the world's greatest needs meet." So I hope that wherever your life takes you, that is something you use to help focus that direction, whether it's in the exact field that you get a degree in or something else. So for me, being an educator, one of the opportunities I have is time during the summer to do other mission opportunities, which is also near and dear to my heart. So I've gone to several places, including Sierra Leone, where we did a music, art, and drama camp. I've been to the Dominican Republic several summers, one summer even for 6.5 weeks at a time, to help with their music ministry there. And then, of course, in my current full-time position as a choral director in the schools, which there is a great need for right now. I share this particular picture because my county has been in the news recently because of school board meetings, and not necessarily in a positive light. I was asked by my music specialist a few weeks ago if my students would be willing to sing the national anthem at the school board meeting. Now, we've done this in the past and I was very excited, but when I mentioned it to my peers, they all said, "Oh no, don't do that. I wouldn't go there right now. I wouldn't do it." But I paused and I said, this is an opportunity to bring something of beauty to a place of unrest. Now, of course, I contacted my friends who work at the administration building and made sure there would be security and that it would be safe for my students, because that is my first priority. But we were able to go, and hearing several of the school board members share with us how important it was to have us there and to thank us for what we were doing, reminded me of how important it is to make sure to share the gifts that we have even in difficult times. These are a few of the places I've had the opportunity throughout my years. A lot of this has been with Voices of Youth to share my gift of music, but also in mission. So it's been awesome to travel the world to share music, but also to get to see different cultures, and not just the touristy side, but to build relationships with the people in the communities as well. So this evening, I want to give you some things that aren't necessarily what you focus on in the classroom in terms of curriculum, but are key points that I feel like will help you be successful wherever you end up in your professional careers. And the first is to embrace your God-given talents, not someone else's. Everyone's journey is unique. Use what God has shown and taught you to inform your vocation, whether that is teaching or something else. Especially in the age of social media, it is very easy to see what someone else's program is doing and to become envious or to worry that you're not doing enough, that you're not good enough. And I promise you that you are, especially if you focus on the gifts that God has given you and sharing those with your students or your community or your ensemble or wherever it is that you're sharing your gifts at the time. For me, as Amanda shared, I went on to study vocal pedagogy and performance at Westminster afterward. So choir and singing has always been a focus of mine. I use that gift to work with my students individually on different auditions. So for example, last year when we had all Virginia chorus auditions, I helped my students and they received 8 out of the 24 spots for my district of 17 high schools. Now, I don't say that to toot my own horn or anything like that. I tell you that because I know that's an area of strength for me, and I want to use that to help my students because they are then successful and have wonderful experiences from that. And then you can see that the other picture, several students who had made our senior honor choir working with conductor Elaine Stanford. these are the experiences that even if these students, many of them might not be going into music, but they will remember that for the rest of their life. So that's why it's important for me to help prepare them for those experiences. So I want to share a quick video with you. This was made with a friend of mine, Mivan Nguyen, before we were right after COVID started and our schools were shut down. And we wanted to find an opportunity to reach our students and to send them a positive message while schools were not in session. And so we recorded this.
Listen, baby, ain't no mountain high, ain't no valley low, ain't no river wide enough, baby.
If you need me, call me, no matter where you are, no matter how far.
Don't worry, baby.
Just call my name, I'll be there in a hurry. You don't have to worry.
In the video, we're just singing Ain't No Mountain High Enough. And the goal of that video in making it was to share with our students that even though we weren't in class, even though we weren't meeting, we wanted them to know that they were in our thoughts, that we were thinking of them, that we wanted them to know that we hoped they were okay. Now, this was used several months later by a fake profile to rant and rave about how teachers were using their school time to make substandard videos with horrible technique and again, just trolling. But I share that because you may have some bad days, but friends and family members of former students and their parents all went and posted positive comments about the work that we do and the programs that we've created. And so it was reaffirming, even though there were some negative comments by, again, a fake profile, that it was reassuring to know several people in the community had been positively impacted. So the next thing I want to share is that you don't know everything, and that's okay. Sometimes as young professionals, we want to show everyone that we're the best, that we can do it all on our own. And I want to tell you that you don't have to, okay? Please know that by finding a mentor, people who are very good in your field that might be close by, or even if you can connect virtually, that can support you in your journey, you will benefit from that, and your students or your ensemble or whatever you end up doing will benefit from that as well. It took me several years to fully embrace that because I felt like that meant I was maybe inadequate. That is not the case. And so I want to share with you some people in my life who have helped make a huge influence. So this is Elaine Stanford, our LCPS music specialist. She's an amazing woman of God, and she provides support. She even says, if you ever need a coffee, let me know, I'll come, I'll bring it to you, I'll support you. She also will listen to my students, give them feedback. But again, if I don't reach out, she doesn't come and help out my students and me. It is okay to ask for help, right? These are two other teachers who are also department chairs. So we talk often about the struggles our departments may be having, right? It's really important to find other people who you can relate to, because if you're a music educator, oftentimes you're what we call a singleton. You feel like an island. You're the only one in your building who may be teaching what it is that you teach. That being said, it's really important to find peers to connect with outside of the classroom. So in the middle is Annabelle. She ended up taking the position from the middle school where I had built the program there and has done an amazing job. And the other one is McKenna. She is someone who inspires me to work harder and to apply for things such as performing at VMEA. When we performed, our two high schools were the ones that performed that same year. And so we encourage each other, push each other to work even harder and to do bigger and better things. And then you also need friends who will encourage you to have fun and just let loose and relax, because we are humans and need that too. So keep in mind that that is also important, and it helps refuel you to be able to do your best when you're working your professional life. The last is what we sometimes call the dream team. As Amanda mentioned, we had a musical that was selected to perform at the International Thespian Festival. Only 10 shows are picked from across the country to do that, and it was a huge accomplishment. But it was only possible because each person in this group contributed their God-given gifts, and we worked together and supported one another to make the scenic design, to make the vocals, the dancing, the acting, all of it come together. All right, I know several colleagues who work at schools where maybe the theater teacher doesn't get along with the band teacher, who doesn't get along with this orchestra teacher. So it's really important to do your best to create those positive relationships, because when you do have them, amazing things can happen. Which leads into our next thing. Every interaction is important. The first thing I want to share here is in between my 2 years of grad school, I was working at a bank in the summers because that was a nice, easy, cush job from 9 to 5. But I received an email from my voice teacher from Westminster Choir College that said there was a New York Vocal Institute, a summer program that had a tenor on full scholarship who dropped out. Would you like to come take his place? Like a full ride to a summer program in New York City? Okay, great. And so because my teacher reached out to me, I had to make things happen, but I had a positive relationship with the boss at the bank. Clearly, I had a positive relationship with my voice teacher because he chose to contact me. And then my family and other people helped get me to the city in 2 days for this program to start. Now, I share that because if those positive relationships hadn't been there, I may not have had that opportunity. So just remember that each and every interaction you have can help bring amazing things in your future. So another thing is that students may take your class from a number of reasons. Realize it and embrace it. For example, they may take it because their friends take it. They may take it because it seems like an easy A, whether it is or not. All right, they may like the field trips. They may like you as the teacher, which is awesome if they do. Or they may love making music, which is what your class is all about. Either way, once you get them in class, then you have the opportunity to build the longer lasting relationship and hopefully inspire them with your passion for music. This is a former student of mine. His name's Brandon Diaz. He was on The Voice and on American Idol. That's his girlfriend, who was also on The Voice. And so they like to call themselves a power couple, but she got farther than he did. Sorry, Brandon. But it's been awesome to have, again, support him in his journey. And then he'll come back and he talks to my students and gets them excited about singing and pursuing music in their future as well. You'll also learn that those shows are extremely scripted when you talk to people who have been through those experiences. So just know that if you do have students and you want to encourage to do those opportunities, encourage them to go and do their best, but also know that the TV producers know exactly what they want. And so sometimes, even if you're a good performer, you may not get the opportunity. Another thing is that handwritten notes are super important and they never go out of style. In 2017, I had the opportunity to host the Houghton College Choir as they were on their tour. And afterward, I received, whether it was written by her or someone from her team, a handwritten note from President Mullen. And that was really meaningful to me. And it also can stick around because it's handwritten, it's in front of me, it's not an email or text that gets lost. All right, in the past, I've had my students and I have personally written thank you notes to my parent booster organization members and to my administration, my secretaries at school, administrative assistants, counselors. And then I'll go around later in the school year and I see those thank you notes taped to their computers or by their desk. Again, every interaction is important. Those thank you notes will really pay off down the road. Say if the kid needs to make a difficult switch into a different class with your counselor, or say you need to ask for some support from your administrative staff up front. It really makes a difference, and handwritten notes, while they take a little time, I promise are well worth it. Now, I also ended up receiving a free, all expenses paid trip to China. Why? Because one of my students had posted a video of his group, we called them the Four Tones. They ended up singing at graduation, and an aunt who lives in China saw it and shared it with a friend who was a TV producer. And they had a TV show celebrating China and had different singers or performers from countries sharing Chinese music. And so we ended up being the group from the United States, and they performed a song in Chinese for the show, but it was all expenses paid. And again, that happened simply because we had positive relationships with the student. He posted a video, she shared with somebody else, and we said yes. Now, it took a lot of work to make that happen, especially when students, these students were missing the first few weeks of their college freshman year. If you can imagine, that was not easy to get permission for them to do that, but we worked really hard and were as positive as possible to make sure that they would do their work when they returned in order to make it happen. Because again, that's something that they'll never forget. Now, next thing, it's not always personal, all right? What do I mean when I say that? That means whether a lesson or conversation doesn't go the way you hoped, sometimes it has nothing to do with you and everything to do with something else that's going on in that person's life. For example, we don't do it here anymore, but we used to have madrigals, all right? And in McLean, Virginia, which is very close to Sterling where I live and work, there is a school that does madrigal dinners with great success. So I was like, let's do this. I'm gonna do madrigals in my community. It was a horrible flop. Why? Because the community has no experience or understanding of what a madrigal dinner is. There wasn't a lot of excitement because they didn't have that experience. And so I wasn't fully understanding my demographic. Doesn't mean that the students didn't do a good job, that we didn't promote it. I just wasn't realizing what was best for my particular community. Another thing is that we had a performance recognizing veterans, and we worked with the West Point Alumni Glee Club. They didn't come in to practice with us until the dress rehearsals. Now, we had also put on a production of Peter Pan the 2 weeks prior to when we were doing this. And so a lot of difficult things led to before this performance happened, but it came off, it was very successful, but the process was often really stressful, and to the point where some of my dream team said afterward, we're never doing the show again. Because again, you need to understand what is the capacity, what do you need in order for it to be successful? So that's why I share that. Now, some of you may recognize screens from last year, okay? Oftentimes when I was teaching last year, I would have 1, 2, maybe no students showing their faces on the screen. It was not a personal reflection on me or the relationship that we had. I think you can all just speak to the fact that it was a difficult year, and especially if you don't see your peers' cameras on, and we weren't forced to have our students have their cameras on. Oftentimes they chose not to. This was a sectional picture, by the way. The altos chose to put up their stuffed animals instead. So you're not gonna necessarily be able to hear this really well unless you're watching on. But when I was in Sierra Leone on the music, arts, and drama camp, we had chimes there. And so I was trying to help teach them how to play some songs that they knew. They knew a lot of the familiar hymns that you might recognize. And one was Jesus Loves Me. Well, I quickly realized that trying to teach them to read the musical notation individually was not going to work. So what did we do? We handed out chimes so that they could play chords together so that as many students as possible would be able to perform and they would feel successful. So we'll see if. Okay, so again, that wasn't something that we had planned necessarily, but we adapted, we were flexible, we made it work so that everyone was participating and had a great time, which is definitely important when you're teaching or leading a rehearsal of any kind. So the next thing I would encourage you to do is look for God incidences in your life. So I believe that all things can be an act of worship and be mindful of God's presence in our daily lives, and he can help inform all that we do. One thing is, when I went to Westminster, I didn't know anyone going to Westminster, and I wasn't familiar with anyone living in the Princeton area. So I just decided to write churches around Princeton, Methodist churches, and said, hey, is there anyone who has a room for rent or anyone looking for a roommate? And it turns out there was a pastor whose wife was attending Princeton Theological Seminary, and housing is provided to them. And they had a house that they weren't using. So they offered to let me live in the house that was right next to the church, which was further away from school, so they chose not to live there. And I was able to live there for rent-free for a year. So any of you who might be pursuing future education, it doesn't hurt to take a moment and to write to see if someone else might be able to assist you. The next thing is my church, my current church. I've often said that I will not work at a church unless I call it my church home. It's really important to me, and I would encourage you not to make offering your music at a church just a job, because it should be an act of worship. And for me, that means it's my church home. So I'm a member there. I contribute in other ways other than just the music ministry. And when I moved to Sterling, I had commuted for 7 years over an hour, and I decided when I took the high school job, I needed to live a lot closer. So when I moved, I had a friend invite me to her church, which she doesn't attend very often, by the way, so God was working in mysterious ways. But she invited me to her church and said, hey, I'd love for you to come check out our church. I think you'd really like it. Well, I went, and they had really decent music. So I said, okay, this is a place where I could see myself fitting in. And wouldn't you know, a couple weeks later, they announced that the music director was leaving. And several people in the church who knew me came up and asked me about it. Now, I was a little hesitant because I had just left my previous church job, and it was kind of nice to have some time off. But once I worked with the choir in an interim position for 6 weeks, I developed an awesome relationship with the people there, and they've become like a family to me. And so it's been an awesome experience. And in return, I've invited my students from school, optional, of course, never mandatory, to come perform and sing with us. And now several of them are part of this group or have even gone to college. And when they come back, they still call this church and this choir home to them, which is really important to me. Another example of a God incidence is the performance we did for the Virginia Music Educators Conference. This program I decided to base on Psalm 13 with a focus on mental health. Our principal had asked us to do that year because we had lost a student to suicide the year prior. So mental health was a big focus in our school. So what I decided to do is take Psalm 13 and lay out songs that went along with the different verses. So it says, how long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? And we sang an arrangement of Reflection from Mulan. How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and day after day have sorrow in my heart? There's a song called Voices by Kevin Foster that is very, has a lot of turmoil in it and voices inside. How long will my enemy triumph over me? We sang Please Stay by Jake Runestad, which is about suicide. Look on me and answer, my Lord, my God. Then we sang a song called Most Living Moment by David Charles. Give light to my eyes or I'll sleep in death. We sang Illumina by Patrick Hawes. And my enemy will say, I have overcome him, and my foes will rejoice when I fall. But I trust in your unfailing love. We sang Love Deliver Me by Stephen Hatfield. My heart rejoices in your salvation. I will sing the Lord's praise, for he has been good to me. We sang When I Can Read My Title Clear by Will Averitt, a Virginia composer, who just happens to also live 2 doors down from my parents now, but that's a separate thing. Now, I share this with you because we worked really hard and we're really excited about this performance. The day we were supposed to travel to the convention, which was in mid-November, we had an ice storm and snowstorm. In Virginia, that's not normal. Okay. Luckily, we called the bus company. They said, okay, we can go. Let's make it happen. We get there, 20 minutes down the road, the bus driver says, this is not safe. We cannot go. I'm turning around. Really disappointing, right? I was heartbroken, if I'm being honest, but my students were really supportive. We thought maybe we could live stream it. Wasn't going to work out. So God knew what was happening though, because later on we were invited to perform at the Virginia All-State weekend. And so instead of performing for an audience that was just music educators, we ended up singing the concert in front of all the All Virginia Chorus students. So my friend said, this is the audience that needed to hear this. You may have saved lives tonight, because all of those students were the ones hearing this program about mental health. Now, it's a powerful thing. And again, a reminder that sometimes God's time is not always our time, but it doesn't mean he won't make awesome things happen. And then this was some pictures of us going to Richmond when we finally were able to perform. Then the last thing I'd share with you is that music is a gift. The best gift I ever received was actually, I received at a funeral. It was my grandfather's funeral. My grandparents were missionaries in Cuba for 19 years and Haiti for 28. And my grandmother passed away before I was even born. And someone, when they came to the funeral, brought 12 MP3s of them recorded Creole hymns from when they had done a radio program in Haiti at 5:30 in the morning. Now, I probably would not have listened that early, but receiving this recording, the 12 recordings and pictures, which I had never seen, was the best gift I had ever received. Just play it briefly
la même li sauve moi li pardonne a toi li vin besoin la foi moi vin faire que moi rempli en soi l'infeliz Seigneur moi feliz.
So I just wanted to share a little bit with you because that is something I had never heard. And while I had done a paper in my history and philosophy education class with Dr. Lisselle Peterson here, I had learned a little bit about my grandfather's experience with music, but didn't realize how much my grandmother and grandfather had used music in their ministry in Haiti. People at the funeral came and talked about how my grandfather had been their choir master. And this is something I had never heard of before. And so it really touched me, and I connected with my family and music in a way that I had never known before. So then later on as a teacher, I was able to give the gift of music at a funeral. The student next to me with red hair, her name's Gabby. Her mom passed away from cancer while she was my student. The family asked me to come and sing 2 songs at the funeral, which was really hard, but it was a way for me to provide my gift that God had given me as a way of comforting their family. And then just some pictures of some other experiences that we had performing on the Millennium stage. This is a gift to those students. Again, even though many of them won't pursue music, these are things that they'll remember for often the rest of their lives. Performing for a stage of 5,000 individuals with standing ovations in the middle. It was a really moving performance. So what I would encourage you to do is listen, seek, and discern your calling. Use your passions to change the world, one relationship at a time. God bless. Oh, yes. Do you have questions? I will answer them to the best of my ability.
I will make a comment while they're thinking of a question. When you finished with music as a gift, I can attest to Jordan's social media presence. And you know how during the pandemic, you were scrolling social media to get all the news and it was just disturbing. And you're like, I should get off of here, but I can't get off here. And then all of a sudden there would be Jordan singing a hymn most of the time, and it was a true gift to people that listened to it. I think you probably got more messages from me during COVID. and also he was always wearing a Houghton t-shirt and sweatshirt. Like,
I'm so sorry. She saw me not wearing anything Houghton related. I did pack it, I promise. But
he's like sharing his gift with the world, and there he's got a Houghton sweatshirt and t-shirt on every time.
well, it was a
Thank you.
lovely opportunity.
question.
Sure.
I was curious about the clip that you showed where you were doing Jesus Loves Me and the Bells. I might have missed it, but what was that situation again?
So a friend of mine has a close connection with what is now called the Child Reintegration Center, but it was formerly known as the Child Rescue Center in Bo, Sierra Leone. A lot of the families had lost parents due to the civil war that happened there. And so it was essentially an orphanage. And so we came to help lead a music, arts, and drama camp with the students that were there. Now, all of them have been placed with families in the community. And so the mission there focuses more on training leaders in the community to work with the kids on a daily basis. So we wouldn't necessarily do exactly what we did here in the video I showed you, but we went and maybe similar to what a vacation Bible school would look like here, that's what we did in Sierra Leone.
I have a question.
Sure.
What would you say, in your experience, has been the greatest challenge out in your world of choral conducting, music teaching, that your collegiate experience did not prepare you for?
That's a great question. I would say maybe the logistical, procedural, everyday paperwork. So for example, if you do a field trip, all the forms and procedures that you need to do. And for every county, sometimes every school, it's different. And so while some school systems may give you a great mentor that shows you how to do all those things, I would say that it's not something you can necessarily be taught in the classroom because every place does it so differently. So that's why when I say it's okay to ask for help, those are the types of things that if you do have someone you trust or someone who's a mentor, they can help walk you through those things, because otherwise they can seem incredibly overwhelming.
First, thank you. This has been incredible. Lots of times when we have best talks, we have folks who are retired or, nearing the end of their career. Obviously, you have a lot left to do. So I'm wondering, what are you working on now? Where do you feel God leading you? What's the next chapter look like for you?
Ooh, I'm excited at some point to make music without masks in the short term. Honestly, if I had the money and the time to do it, the Voices of Youth experience that I shared about, that was transformational for me. And it died down, and it makes me really sad because it combined the two things that I just love the absolute most. Because I feel like in mission, and when you're using music in mission, the joy that you get back is way more than the work you put into it. Unfortunately, I think part of it is getting students nowadays to give up 3-4 weeks at a time in the summer. It's really hard. Also, the communication methods within the church, from church to church, getting them to get youth signed up and registered for something like that became more challenging as time went on. So if I had the opportunity, I would love to create something like that again, because the students that I participated in that program with are now working at the Virginia Annual Conference, our pastors in churches, our worship leaders in the different churches. And I think by having that, you help create the next generation of leaders in the church. I know it's late, and I appreciate your time. As someone with multiple jobs, I get it.
Well, if we don't have any more questions, let's give Jordan a thank you. Thank you all for coming this evening. I'm so glad that we've had an opportunity to be together as